Hello, friends, and happy Easter. I'm Lisa, and I'm back with this picture I colored with Copic markers of the Great Commission of Jesus. Um, I've been doing this 40-day Bible challenge that Sandy Allnock has hosted, and this picture was one I drew in my Bible, and I loved it so much. So I edited that photo you just saw a minute ago that I'd taken of the drawing in my Bible journaling, and I adjusted it on the computer, printed it out, and used my Cricut light box to use pencil to outline it on this full-size piece of paper. So now I'm using my Copic markers, and fair warning, I'm not a Copic expert. So if you're looking for like some super awesome tips, so am I. I thought I did pretty well for this being really like the first big picture I did. So my thought, and I've done a lot of watercolor and stuff like that. So my thought was if I can kind of saturate the page with the lightest color, then the medium and the dark tone will kind of flow a little bit better, which really worked. So I used Sandy Allnock's hex chart to kind of pick out my different colors. I know you're supposed to pick out like the same color family or something like that, but I was like, it'll work. So that's kind of my philosophy on everything, though. I always say, I'm going to read the directions and figure out how to do this perfect. And then I'm like, that's too much work. I'm just going to see if this works. And so that's kind of how it happened here. Now you can see that dark color is quite a bit darker than the mid-tone. So I'm doing a little bit of the tip-to-tip thing to kind of get a tone in between there. I actually think I could have gone darker on his skin tone. Now, before you say, hey, Jesus was like a Middle Eastern Jew, I get it. I am not a Copic coloring star, so this was as good as it was gonna get. I wasn't ready to try like a bunch of different skin tones. I just really wanted to be coloring this, so there's that. So anyway, I think I could have gone darker though, just added more shadows to really make it pop a little bit better. But it turned out fine, so I'm happy. Now, I know that his thorny crown is usually portrayed as dark, kind of like dried out, which is cool, but it's Easter, and I was like, you know what? Jesus' crown is probably like flourishing, right? Like he overcame death, so his crown is probably like, green now. So I did that, and where I got this idea from was Psalm 110, and I really didn't get the psalm, so I was reading this. What are they called? I don't know. When somebody explains it and tells you what is going on. And so it was saying that Jesus was sent as our prophet, our priest, and our prince. And so I really wanted to capture that. And it also talked about the church being the lily among the thorns. So I really just got this very vivid image of like what I'm coloring here. Except for the lily was white, but with the white bird, I was like, I want to go with something really, bright and colorful and fun. So I went with the like pink red tiger lily or whatever. So you'll see that in a minute. I did try out these color combinations on a scrap piece of paper beforehand. There is a stamp set by Jane Davenport of like women's faces. And I just used that and colored in the skin tone. And then half her hair, I did a different color group. And I didn't like the light color on that because it made it look very dull. So I changed that color. And then I liked it. So that's the color I did on his hair. And I tried to do flicking motions to kind of make it look like hair. I think I need some more work on that, but it came out pretty good. Um, Now, I erased all the pencil lines on the flower because I knew where the pencil was going to be the lightest area. See, like that C01 or whatever marker I just used, that's the lightest color. So I erased them, and then I had a few issues. But I think you can't really tell. It's fine. So I this was my most exotic coloring so far. And what I did was I used that C00 marker as the base and then 3 pink reds kind of to blend in with it. And using that very light R20 marker to blend in with the C0 marker actually worked really well. I was kind of surprised because they're not the same color. Like they're not even in the same color family. They're completely different. But it worked out really well, and I think it turned out overall just amazing. So I did the C0 marker, and then I would do the R20 marker, and then I did the R08, which was the darkest color. And with that, I would just add in the dots and the lines. And then with the R43, which is kind of the mid pink tone, is I'd color over it to kind of soften that out. And I'd also do a little bit of the tip to tip with the R08 and the R43, which the darkest in the mid-tone, just so that I wouldn't use that straight dark tone. I felt like that'd be a little too dark. I did use it in some places to shade, like you just saw me do right there, to really define the different petals. Um, so that's one thing I think is important as you go through this, is to really get the coloring right first and then add the defining details. Um, and you have to be in any kind of coloring, painting, shading, you really have to be willing to go dark. And you'll see that when I do the bird in just a minute. Like, it's scary, but you have to do it to make it look good. So here I'm doing that same exact thing where I'm defining and adding the darker places to really make it look. I think in general I could just do better at this. And I'm saying this to you because I'm not super great at it. I always went too light. And all my like art teachers were like, "You need to add more shadows." I'm like, "I don't like shadows." But really, to make the light look good, you have to have the dark shadows. So I'm going in and doing that same exact process here on the crown, and that looks so much better. Um, I used the jade, this very light jade color, as the lightest color, and I think it really made that whole crown kind of pop and vibrancy, so I liked that a lot. And I felt like at this point that I should have added eyebrows, but I didn't. So here's that scrap piece of the paper I was talking to you about. And here I'm trying out different colors for the bird. And I know what I want, and I want the center of the bird to look pretty, pretty much like a dove. And then as the wings go out, to kind of fade, right? Because it's, it's not like a real dove per se. It's more like a spiritual dove or whatever. So I wanted the wings to kind of fade into the background. And he doesn't actually have tail feathers. He has these like rays of light. So at this point, I was like, man, I have totally messed this beautiful picture up. Like, I've been working so hard, and now this looks so ugly. I think you saw earlier what colors I was using, and I might put them back up on the screen. Um, but I'm using, I think, C00, C01, C03, and then I forget what blue that is, but it's kind of a darker blue because I wanted some blue tones. Now, I really had to color the bird first, the dove first, um, so that I could blend it into the background. Now, the dove doesn't look white when it's against that white background, but it will look a lot better. So as you can see, the inside of the bird, it looks pretty, like a bird. And as the wings go out, it fades out into that lightest color. Now, here I'm choosing the pictures for those rays. So trying to figure out, there's this one that has the darkest color of like a different color family, and the one I'm going to draw next has the same color family, just a darker marker. And I was trying to figure out if I wanted the same color family or the darkest marker to be in a different color family. And you can see on the bottom bird that the top of his head is that other color family. And I think the yellows, see, it's very wet on the paper right now, which is why it makes it look a little strange. But in person, I was able to tell better the color differences. And I just really liked that other color family. So I went ahead and did that. It really added another dimension. So I did the same thing here where I erased almost all of the pencil lines, because once you color over them in these Copic markers or alcohol markers, you capture that. Like, you can't go back and erase the pencil line. It's kind of trapped under a layer of color. So you want to kind of erase it as much as possible. Now, I wanted a definite kind of ray look, like sun rays or whatever. So that's what I was going for, and that's why it's kind of streaky, which is what I wanted. Now, here was the scariest part. I was like, oh my gosh, have I, completely messed this up? But I just go over it and over it with this background color and the C0 color of the bird. And as it dries, it blends together. Now, I wanted Jesus and the rays and the bird to kind of pop out, so I did some shading around those edges. The B01 is the main background color, and this is probably the first time I've ever used that exact marker, and I need to buy a refill now because I use so much. But, that's what I bought them for, is to use them, so I was happy. I was like, oh, that's fine, I can do that. Now, I didn't go back and forth as much on this wing, and so I had to do that later. But I do go back and get it pretty close. It's hard to do exactly the same thing on both sides, but I think it came out well on both sides. So you'll see, I'll color this whole thing, and it won't look as smooth as it does in the end. And that's because I ran out of ink in that B01 marker, and so I couldn't really go over the whole thing. But I have the B00 marker, which is one shade down, and I just covered the whole background in that as well. And I just streaked off the sides. I did that flicking motion like I was doing with the B04 and B06 markers to create the shading. I just do that with the B00 marker to the end, and that marker is very juicy, so it really kind of blended everything out and made it pretty smooth. So see here, I'm going back and getting that wing the same. So Now I'm just showing you what marker I did. And this is after I made that change. So now the last couple things I have is the legs, the beak, and the eye. Now the one part I didn't like was this center. I was trying to make like feather looking things, and that was just a mistake. So I used some of the colorless blender on that section to kind of blend everything out, or kind of push some of those darker colors to the back of the page. And then I go over it with the C0 marker and then the C01 marker, and it looks good. So these three kind of pink salmon colors turned out really well for the beak and for the feet. It was kind of weird. I figured the beak of a dove was yellow, but according to the internet, they're more kind of salmon-y colored, so I went with that. Excuse me. So, it was all turning out good, and I got to this point and I was like, oh my gosh, why did I pick that yellow color for those rays? It's just kind of, it doesn't flow with the rest of the picture. Maybe I should have done it in those C0 markers, but obviously it was too late, so I forged ahead, and actually at the end I really liked it. Once I add the words in, it looks really good. So you can see the tummy where I'd had those flick marks smoothed out. Now I've decided to go with this BG18 marker for the eyes. So I do the full eye in that color, and then I add some black to the very center pupil and just above the top edge. At the very end, which I didn't get on camera, I added 2 little dots with my Sakura white gel pen, and to make it look like it was an eye and glossy. So you'll see that in the end pictures, I just didn't capture it. Now, I own this font and I really like it, and I was like, this will be perfect. So, but I was having trouble with my computer. I don't have Word on it because that costs money. I have that on my work computer, so I just use the Mac Pages or whatever, but I don't use that a whole lot, so I don't have a whole lot of experience with that. So I just printed out about the size I thought it was going to be and cut it up, and it worked perfectly. So I'm using Perfect Card Adhesive by Ranger and Wendy Vecchi, and it's worked out really well. I'm not in love with liquid adhesive. It's always a pain, but for liquid adhesive it works really well. So now I'm using my Cricut Lightbox again after they have fully dried to kind of, I turned the paper over and stuck the pieces of paper down with some masking tape. Then I flipped it over, and now I'm tracing them with a pencil, and I checked it after that first word to make sure it looked good. And then I'll go through and add with my Pilot V5 extra fine black pen the draw in the words. Now at the end, I realized that Prince was just too short in proportion to the other ones. Prophet kind of goes all the way down, Priest goes all the way down, Prince does not. But I didn't want huge spaces between all the letters, so I decided to add a little cross after Prince. And I think it really ties everything together and makes it proportionally visually appealing. Finally, I added Psalm 110 because that's kind of what this picture is like, is my interpretation of that verse. And also I signed it, and that is it. Oh, I do erase the pencil lines but only after the pen has fully dried. Like I'm just showing you right there that I'm going to erase it. You have to wait for it to fully dry though, because you don't want to smudge it everywhere. So now I have a Society 6 page Terry Lisa Create. There is no S, Terry Lisa Create. And if you're interested, I'm of getting like a print of this, or I'm getting a throw blanket, just head over there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy Easter and have a great day.